value added quotient of what they make. Nobody, absolutely nobody buys it for that reason. They buy it because it's cheap. Now, China's recent clampdown on the private tutoring sector has also driven up the jobless rate for young people. They want to become tutors. That's a good job. And the government says, nope, you can't do that. So they're telling young people, you can't do what you want. You have to do what we're going to tell you to do. You have to work in a factory. And they're basically putting the middle finger up to Mr. Xi and says, F you. I'll just stay home and live with mom and dad. I'm not working in a stupid factory. So in the past, they've forced people to do what they want. And now they're just saying, we're not doing it anymore. Now, the dwindling number of manufacturing workers has forced many factories to pay bonuses, boost salaries, which erodes profit margins that were already under pressure due to rising prices of raw material and shipping. That's the other thing you have to consider. If you buy something from China, it has to be shipped across the ocean or flown across the skies. And shipping is the same for everybody. China doesn't get a break on that. Now, Foxconn, one of Apple's largest suppliers last month, raised bonuses for new recruits at its factory in Zhengzhou to 9,000 yuan. That's about $1,400 if they work 90 straight days. Okay, that's according to an advertisement posted by business units of Foxconn on WeChat. WeChat is Chinese Twitter. Okay. Many factory owners are now in a dilemma. They don't know whether they'll be able to make a profit if they accept new orders. Their biggest headache is the struggle with finding workers. In other words, they've got the demand. But if they build it, they don't know that they can turn a profit. And they can't raise their prices because China has always been a price-first builder, which is what happens when you're a price-first builder. The only way to improve is to make it cheaper still. China's working age population, defined as people between 15 and 59, fell to just under 900 million last year, or 63% of the total population. That's down from almost a billion in 2010, or 70% of the population. So their workforce continues to shrink, the younger 15 to 59. China's workforce is expected to drop by another 35 million over the next 5 years. Okay? And the United States is kind of getting that too, the graying of America. But here's the difference between us and them. People are still coming here in droves for a better lifestyle. They're coming from Mexico. They're coming from China. They're coming from many places. Still, Europeans still come here. Okay? Nobody's emigrating to China for a better life. They're just not. The work is hard, the life is hard, and you have no freedom. None. Nobody wants to move there. Many people want to move here, and that's how our workforce is expanding. They don't do that. Now, in Guangzhou, nearly a third of the 100-plus factory workers at a company called BSK Fashion Bags didn't come back after Lunar New Year. They just didn't come back, a third of them. The owner, Jeroen Herms, who's actually a Dutch national who opened this company, he says, we can hardly find any workers because many aren't leaving their hometowns anymore. Again, things are better in their hometown. And of course, there's no COVID-19 problem in China, but the reason they're not coming is because of the COVID-19 problem. So the government is lying and everybody knows. Now, we have our own Dr. Fauci conspiracy theorists around here, but they have them there too. Now, with more people viewing factory work as drudgery, the service industry became the most popular source of employment for migrant workers. Again, people coming from the countryside to the city in 2018, surpassing manufacturing and construction, according to an annual survey of migrant workers by China's Statistics Bureau. Young people are no longer willing to take up just any type of hard work. They have higher expectations for what a job can bring, and they can no longer afford to wait long. They can't afford to wait longer. That's according to Mr. Ding, who's again, we talked about him. He's the Standard Chartered economist. Now, as an individual named Wang Li Yu Wang spent 6 years hopping from one factory job to another in the southern city of Dongguan until 2020. Now, while wages have been rising steadily and job openings at factories have been plentiful, he didn't want to return after the pandemic came because he didn't want to do that type of work anymore. Instead, him and his family moved to Beijing looking for higher paying service jobs. Now, he works as a food delivery man, which pays 10% more than the nearly $1,000 a month salary as a factory worker. He delivers food and makes more than in the factory. Now, his goal is to take home more than $1,500 a month, like some of his friends have been doing with delivery jobs for years. Wang says, "I want to give it a try before I'm old." Again, China depends on cheap labor and a compliant workforce for its success. And right now, friends, they have neither. As I've said before, people are the same everywhere, absolutely everywhere. They want a better life for themselves and for their families. And they want freedom also. Right now, Chinese manufacturing, there's a big demand for it, but there's a big demand for it because it's still cheap. And at the cheap prices, which is all that the West will pay, they can't make a profit. Do you see a big problem here? Yeah, me too. And last but not least, briefly, should we talk about the inflation in China? Now we kind of touched on that. Inflation is at a 13-year high in China too, which adds to their problems. But you think to yourself, okay, they're going to figure out this whole thing. They're going to figure out how to pay people. They're going to figure out how to make their products better. They're going to figure out how to market their profits and make the people happy, because economies figure this out all the time, okay? But China is different. And here's an insider's detail of the Chinese Communist Party's disdain for what they call expendable, or what he calls expendable entrepreneurs. Now, as the country emphasizes common property, a well-connected investor recalls the freewheeling era in Beijing, where tolerated closer ties between communist officials and entrepreneurs ruled. Now, China's recent turn against the wealthy tycoons could surprise a few people, should surprise few people, I should say, least of all the entrepreneurs who China's Communist Party regarded as dispensable tools in their effort to bolster authoritarian rule. Now, such at least is the takeaway from a well-connected investor offering an insider's account in the high-stakes wheeling and dealing with members of the Communist Party elite, with a focus on the mysterious disappearance of his former wife and business partner 4 years ago. Now, for more than a decade, former private equity executive Desmond Shum teamed up with Duan Weihong, a wealthy businesswoman, to develop real estate and infrastructure projects in Beijing, tapping Ms. Duan's ties with members of the party elite, including relatives of a former premier who's now retired. In other words, the connections went away. Now, the couple split up before Mrs. Duan, known as Whitney, went missing in 2017 amid an allegation into a top regional party official. This was a case that was widely seen as an effort by Chinese leader Xi Jinping to purge a potential challenger to his authority. Ms. Duan has not been heard from since. Now, in Red Roulette, this is a memoir to be released next week, Mr. Shum says that Ms. Duan fell victim of the party's use of extra-legal kidnappings to facilitate opaque investigations. Now, who runs China? By now, I realize it's owned by red bloodlines, says Mr. Shum in an interview referring to the families of the party's revolutionary elders. China's wealthy entrepreneurs, he said, are like super salarymen working on behalf of the true owners in the country, the revolutionary elite. Now, in his book, the 52-year-old Mr. Shum recounts his relationship with his ex-wife and the couple's business dealings since early 2000, delving into an earlier era of Chinese politics when members of the party elite and entrepreneurs often worked hand in glove on lucrative deals amid a nationwide, no-holds-barred scramble for riches. But the couple's experiences, at least this according to Mr. Shum, also shed light on Mr. Xi's escalating efforts to rein in private business and redirect entrepreneurial energies in service of the party's priorities. Remember Tycoon Jack Ma? He's the billionaire founder of Alibaba Group. Mr. Shum says, tycoons like Ma are expendable in the eyes of the party. They don't own all the wealth they own. Part of their holdings are held on behalf of the red owners at the back. And for those of you conspiracy theorists out there, red does not mean GOP. Red means communist. That's the original red, the Communist Party. Now, the party's anti-corruption agency and the State Council Information Office, that's the government's public arm, didn't immediately respond to requests for comment. Jack Ma didn't immediately respond to requests for comment either. Well, of course not. The party isn't going to respond, and Jack Ma just got done spending 4 years or 4 months disappeared. He wasn't around. Nobody knew what happened to him, and he's not talking. Now, and he doesn't want that to happen to him again. He's not a fool. Now, in recent months, Mr. Xi has been championing common prosperity. That's a slogan that loosely signals the Communist Party's intention to empower workers and the disadvantaged, limiting gains of the capitalist class when necessary to address social inequalities. Now, this new policy direction is a main driver behind China's regulatory actions against technology companies, including Mr. Ma's Alibaba and other businesses that Beijing views as contributing to social divides. Translation, they're richer than the guys in the party, and they can't be having that now, can they? Now, the authorities most recently targeted the country's online video game industry, one of the largest in the world, in the name of protecting minors. Now, for those of you who don't know, what they did was they made it illegal for kids to play more than, an hour a day, 3 hours a day, or 3 hours a week, video games. That's it. It's against the law to play more video games than that. So in other words, that cut out the demand for Chinese video games. Alliances with businessmen were temporary as part of the party's goals of total control, Mr. Shum writes in his book. Once we were no longer needed to build the economy, invest overseas, or help restrict freedoms in Hong Kong, we too have become the enemy. Now, in retrospect, Ms. Duan's faith was the harbinger of a new uncertainty that would come to envelop entrepreneurs as Mr. Xi entered his second 5-year term as the party chief back in 2017. Mr. Shum believes that his book could be the last chance, if there is a chance, to get the Chinese government to publicly acknowledge Ms. Duan's case. Even if it's just to put her in jail, he said, it's better than this. She's been never heard of or never seen since. Now, let's wrap. In China, like anywhere else in the world, the captains of industry make the economy flourish and function. Now, forget about the 1%. Forget about the Gini coefficient. Forget about income inequality, okay? Other than a fool, nobody here listening to this would disagree that the captains of industries, the ones who run the show, the Elon Musks, the Steve Jobs, the Bill Gates, even the George Soroses, the Koch brothers. These are the guys who run the show. They're the ones that have the ideas. They're the ones that implement the program, the policies, the game plan, and they make lots of money doing this, billions of dollars doing it, okay? And why do they do it? because the reward is a better lifestyle purchased with the money